Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been so pleased to have some time with all of you with ideas and expertise concerning twice exceptionality, to meet professors, researchers, practitioners, parents, and twice exceptional individuals in such a wonderful community where each one is happy to exchange knowledge and experiences. And I was honored to join the expert Jacqueline Byrne workshop on Sunday. It was a such rich experience that had a lot of practices from long excellent implications of pedagogies. I would like to take a few moments to tell you a bit about Jackie's amazing personality before inviting her to the stage. Jacqueline Byrne is a visionary behind Flex School, a network of learning communities specifically designed to engage and support the creative, asynchronous minds of gifted and twice exceptional students. An acknowledged expert in education, Jackie is a sought-after speaker presenting to school district guidance counselors, state gifted boards, education associations, and professional conferences. Jackie, honored to be member of the BRIDS Graduate School Advisory Council, and is also in the advisory board for the documentary film The G Word. Prior to founding Flex School, Jackie co-founded the widely respected AVAD College preparation and counseling firm. She has a BA from Yale University and is a parent of a twice exceptional child. Please join me in welcoming the expert, Jacqueline.
Thank you very much. Is this still on? The mic is on. Okay, awesome. Good morning, everyone. I don't know how my personality will come out at 9 o'clock in the morning, but we will give this a try. So, all right, I'm just going from here because this is no longer set up. So, what I'd like to do is go through some of the unexpected ways that 2E kids go through school. And if you think about the way that they approach school, it's really helpful to be able to react to them in an appropriate way. And so we're going to go through the rules that most of us grew up with, and then how they disagree. So this is a teacher, by the way, under all of these popsicle sticks. The 2E kids want a different set of rules. They don't really care so much that we have different rules or that we have different expectations. So let's run through them. The first one, in almost every culture in the world, we're supposed to respect our elders. Some more, some less. But 2E kids, especially, gifted kids also think that just because you're old doesn't mean that you deserve respect. And think about how that plays out. In first grade, they say to the teacher, "You're wrong. It's this." And you know what? The kid is probably right. And then in 4th or 5th grade, you start getting the process questions. Like, why did you ask her the question that way? Why didn't you ask her this way? And teachers in the classroom are a little surprised when someone this big tells them that they're wrong. And the immediate reaction is to get defensive and to say, you know, you can't talk to me that way, or you can't ask me that question. That immediately sets up a conflict between the students and the teachers, and they do not understand why the teacher is angry, because they're coming from a completely different place. They don't think that they're supposed to respect you automatically, and you haven't yet earned their respect. And this, I think, of all of the things we're going to talk about, this causes the most problems in schools. So we're going to talk about how to react. Don't worry, I'm going to go through the problems first, but then I have scripts. We have all kinds of different things to talk about for ways to get around this. But it's important to know how they experience school and the way that you're behaving. Doesn't mean you're wrong and they're right, or vice versa. So a lot of people are sort of in the, well, this is the way it's always been done. And by the way, this boy made that mask for his chemistry experiment because he thought it was more fun than the chemistry experiment. So I was walking at one of our campuses, and a boy he was 10 or 11 at the time, and he was giving the teacher a really hard time. And I went around and I came back and it was still happening. So I said to him, hey, I don't remember rational expressions. Can you teach me? And no. I was like, come on, I'm old and I don't remember this. And he's like, okay, with a smirk, goes to the board and writes rational expressions, and, you know, big smile coming back at me saying, I got you. And you know what? He had. It's hilarious. So I'm not sure how much he learned, but he was calmer after that and went on to do the math lesson. One of the things about gifted programs is that the kids who are in them know how to play school. They're smart. I'm not denying they're smart, they are. But they know how to play school. But some of the smartest kids and the 2E kids don't know how to play, and they don't want to play. And that means that many, many students are not recognized as gifted or 2E because they just don't want to do it the same way. Now, I'll tell you a quick story. I have 4 kids, a set of triplets, and 2 of the triplets were flunking 6th grade. And one of them came out of 5th grade, and they had a summer project to do for the gifted program. And so he did a 60-page research project over the summer. The research was impeccable. The way it looked, not so much. So the gifted teacher opened the book, closed it, and handed it back and said, it's too messy, do it over. And it was messy, but the research was amazing. And that was the end of the Gifted and Talented program for that child. And so what we say and the way we react makes a difference every single day, and they don't forget when we say something like that. So we think that there are ways that you're supposed to go through school, and they don't want to play school. They just want to learn. And not only do they just want to learn, they want to learn their way. We want them to read the instructions. They're not interested. Why would you read the instructions and know what the science experiment is going to show before you start? How boring is that? They want some mystery. Let them figure it out for themselves. The harder they have to work to figure it out, the better, and the more interested they're going to be. So that leads us to all kinds of things we're going to talk about in a minute. How do you make it so that that's something that they want to learn? Because no one wants to learn everything, right? Many people, especially people coming out of a liberal arts tradition, think that the best thing to do is to learn everything and get a really broad education, and then start to customize when you get to graduate school. That is not how our kids think. I love this picture. This is on the Hudson River. There's a new bridge, and we have one campus in New York and one campus in New Jersey. It was COVID, so we had to do everything outside. So we had the New York kids start on one side of the Hudson, and the New Jersey kids start on the other side of the Hudson, and we met up in the middle. And there was a big deck area, and this was one of the girls looking down into the Hudson River for a long time. You know, if they find this topic interesting, they'll spend 2 years going into greater depth than sometimes someone who's got a master's degree. They don't know anything else. It's a very narrow, deep vein. But they know a lot, and they learned it themselves, and they were totally into it. We have to give them the time and space for some of those deep dives. And we'll talk more about how to do that in a minute. So they don't really think that classroom rules should apply to them. And I want to show you a quick video. This student is now a sophomore, and because he couldn't do school the way people expected him to do, and because he didn't fit within the construct of the school where he was, I want you to listen to what happened to him.
Hi, my name's Teddy. I'm 16 years old.
That's Teddy.
Hi, my name's Teddy. I'm 16 years old, a current high school sophomore, and I'm definitely too weak. Growing up, I had a lot of trouble with school, and like with the curriculum and my classmates, and like looking back, I think it was mostly due to how we sort of classify intelligence, because what we do is like we break it into these 3 groups. So like you're either average, you're below average, or you're above. And the expectation is that like you fit. It's just one of these groups. Well, I very quickly found out that I didn't. Like I was a big history and English student, but the trouble was I wasn't just good at them. I was extraordinary at them. Like I was multiple grade levels ahead of my classmates. People were telling me that I was a genius. However, at the exact same time, I was floundering in math and science. Like everything had to be repeated at least 3 times for me to remember, and even then, it didn't make sense. So what I was this really angry and confused 13-year-old who had this college level ability in verbal comprehension, writing, and also visual spatial skills, but I could barely do the simplest kinds of math. Like I couldn't count to 30, and it was impossible for me to talk to other kids. And like at the time, of course, my thought process wasn't at all like, yeah, I have a lot of things working out for me. Like I can do cool things, but I need support in other areas. I mean, what I was thinking was, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, my IQ was 145. That says I should be the best in everything, because isn't that how intelligence works? Isn't it that, like, you're average or you're not? So what I did was I ended up holding myself to this absurdly high standard in everything. And whenever I couldn't live up to it, I got depressed. I felt like I failed. And I lost confidence in everything, even the things I was already really, really good at. And it just got worse. I got anxious. Like, I was even suicidal, because I had this constant feeling that I had failed, that I couldn't live up to the expectation, my supposed intelligence bracket. And like this notion of being a specialist high performer who also struggles with basic tasks, like, that was alien. It just didn't occur to me that strengths and weaknesses could coexist, but they do. And that's what being a TUI individual is. And that's how Flex helped me so much. Like, what they did was they treated me as the sum of all of my various abilities, my flaws and quirks, and just the things that make me me. And because of that, because of this composite, like, perception of me, I was able to do a lot of work on myself. And finally, like, I was able to accept who I was for, like, who I am now. And, like, I'm the really zany and loud guy who does great in all of his classes, except for math, and I'm completely tone deaf. But get this, I can identify any Red Hot Chili Pepper song within like 5 seconds of it playing and then tell you everything about it. I can't throw a ball for the life of me. I introduced a Saturday night movie with my school spirit team, and I do comic relief roles in theater, and sometimes I help out in the set shop, and like in my spare time I fool around with old speaker systems, and I'm also writing a stream of consciousness science fiction novel. All of that's who I am. Like, that is a TUI resume. That's me. And I'm really happy about that. Like, it's who I am.
I love that kid. Teddy said that he was suicidal, and he was. And the pain of not being able to live up to expectations and not being able to feel good about himself came primarily from school. And so I want to go through how we move forward from here. How do you take a kid who's not going to respect you unless you respect them back? How do you take someone who feels terrible about themselves and make it better? And the first thing is, the first thing is that it isn't personal, ever. I've had 10-year-olds curse me out at the top of their lungs. It's not personal, it's not about me. Something is going on with that kid that means that that is the only thing that they think there is to do in that moment. Doesn't mean they're right, doesn't mean that they can say that to me, but that's not the first issue. The first issue is that we can't take it personally, or we get defensive, and then we react to them as though they're attacking us, and we can no longer see clearly. Most important thing, it is never, ever about you. So if you assume that everyone, including your colleagues, the head of your school, if you assume that everyone is doing the best that they can, it changes how you react. The kids don't want you to think they're lazy. They're not lazy. Something's getting in the way. They don't want you to think that they're obnoxious or disrespectful or all of the things, disorganized, all of the things that kids get told in school. They don't want any of that. They're not trying to do that. And we have to give them the grace and the space to be able to be their best selves. And that, to me, is the most important part of school. How do we create a place where everyone, including teachers and administrators, can be their best selves? So if you assume everyone has good intentions and you speak calmly, sometimes that's a little hard. Quietly, okay. Neutrally is actually the the most difficult one to manage at all times. And if you aren't neutral when you speak, it's okay. Apologize. Because I started out with that the kids don't think we deserve respect because we're old. So if someone speaks to you in a way that makes you feel worse about yourself, and you're a kid, you go on the attack because you've already discounted that someone can, that you just have to look up to them because they're old. You've already discounted that completely. And being neutral is respectful. If you think about the kids and you treat them the same way that you would treat another adult, you will get it right. Do not treat them as though they're a child. Tell them exactly the way that you would say it to an adult, and it will go much, much better. And we'll talk about how to do that. By the way, these are real pictures, obviously. This little guy in 3rd grade, we have an online campus, and we have young kids, and about once a week, I would get an email from him, and he'd say, "Jackie, I need all of the emails for all of the parents in all the campuses." And I had to say no. I told him why I had to say no. But every week, it was something else. And he's like a budding CEO. He's ready to go. 3rd grade, he's got it. If the kids aren't emotionally safe, there isn't anything we can teach them, and there isn't anything that they're going to be willing to learn from us. So my feelings are accepted, not judged. That goes back to speaking neutrally. I'm worthy as I am. My teacher enjoys me. The kids are so funny. So funny. And I'll tell you a quick story. I told this in the workshop the other night, but it's still funny. So we had 2 5th graders, and they were fighting over whether cats or dogs are better. It's a very important fight, you know. Some days you just have to do this. And it started escalating. So the head of school started lingering nearby, and it escalated again. And the teacher, the head of school, just sauntered by, and she said, "You know, you could agree to disagree." And one of the little boys, hand on his hip, so much attitude, says, "Lynn, it's 2021, and we do not agree to disagree in this country anymore." That's amazing. Okay, he could have said it a little better, come on. But that's a different conversation for a different day. We were on the floor. So funny and so true. I'm sure you know the United States is a little divided at the moment. So if you get a kick out of them, that goes a very long way. We had a student who didn't want to write sentences. 4th grade, 5th grade, I don't know. Didn't want to write any sentences in English. So he took the vocabulary words and he made an acrostic poem instead. It was amazing, but he didn't write any sentences. That, giving him extra credit for that acrostic poem and then still asking him to do the sentences because there was something in particular that he was working on, gave him the respect of appreciating his creativity and helping him know that we thought he had done a great job and something really creative. When we look for teachers, we look for 3 things. They have to know the academic material. They have to be humble enough, and this goes along with all of the rules. They have to be humble enough to say to a child, I don't know the answer. Let's figure it out together. Or, you know, why don't you teach the class about this? You know a lot. And not every smart person can do that. But that's respectful. That's what you would do to another adult. And that's what they expect from us. It is not always easy. There are moments. And then the third thing we look for is that they think the kids are funny. If they don't think the kids are funny, you know, the kids are challenging. And all of these, you know, the kids who get in your face and question everything and always have their hand up and they never put it down no matter what because they think they know more than you, those kids are hard in the classroom. And if you don't think they're funny, it makes for a longer day. So we definitely want them to appreciate them and get a kick out of the kids. If you assume the kid is being lazy and not trying, they will not do any work for you. And just quickly, we had an English class, like 8th graders, I think, and they had an essay for an exam. The teacher went through with them all of the different steps, gave them time to do all of the steps. They had an outline. They could bring information in. And they had an hour and a half. I proctored that exam for the teacher because she couldn't be there. And at an hour and a half, no one was finished. I extended it. At 3 hours, one student had finished the writing and was now doing the outline. Oops. The other students did not finish and took it home. They worked on it over the weekend and they brought it back. You can say they had trouble, and you can say that they weren't prepared, but they were prepared, they just couldn't put it all together. Right? And this was the first time that they had seen an exam like this, and we wanted them to experience it sort of real time, but with a lot of extended time, so that then we could work with them on it going forward. You can't say they're lazy. They weren't lazy at all. They worked that entire time. They just couldn't do it. So instead of thinking they're lazy, something is getting in the way. We help them figure out how to learn. We don't tell them how to learn because we're not in their heads. How in the world are we supposed to know if we don't ask them and we don't help them figure it out? We have to be the detectives with the kids to help them figure it out. And you've heard a lot about strength-based curricula here this week, so I will skip that part, but it is the foundation of a school for 2E kids. Okay, let's go through a few scripts. This is a good place to start when you're talking to the kids. So if you use the language that if you use words that include judgment, they'll pick up on it every time. I don't care if they're on the spectrum and you think they're not, so savvy socially, they'll still get any negative connotation that you ever say. So you don't have to say good or bad, you can say expected or unexpected. And that comes from Michelle Garcia Winner's Social Pragmatics, if you want to look that up. So a lot of people say, don't talk to me that way. Goes back to kids are supposed to respect me. But that's not helpful to move forward. Because the minute you say, don't talk to me that way, they are no longer listening. And there's no conversation, and they're going to react to your judgment. But if you say, calmly, if you say, try it again in a different way. Try it again using different words. they'll take a breath, and they will. And if they can't do it that minute, give them a couple minutes, go back and try it again. I've already told you several times, this happens a lot, right? Kids with slow processing speed can't keep up with your instructions. And then you go by and you tell them again, no, you have to do it this way. Well, they maybe aren't on that step yet, and they're lost. And then they react. So, can I help you? Simple, right? Except that most of us have a natural inclination to want to be the authority figure in the room. And when you go to graduate school and you learn about classroom management, they talk about how you have to manage the classroom. But if you try to manage these kids, they hurt, they don't understand, they get depressed, they get anxious. Can I help you? Changes everything. Some kids you can't say, can I help you in front of other kids? So you have to know the student. Sometimes it's better to talk to them, say, hey, I can come help you after class, or stay for a second, we'll work on it later. Take the pressure off of them so that then you create an opening where they can talk to you and learn something later. So, the kids who have their hands up all the time, the know-it-alls, who probably do know it all. They constantly have their hand up. No one else can talk. They get upset if you call on someone else who doesn't know the answer. Hard to manage in a classroom, right? But if you talk to them ahead of time, and by the way, someone asked me during the workshop, well, doesn't it take a lot of time to talk to these kids outside of class? It does, but it saves you a whole lot of time for the rest of the year. So it's worth putting in some time at the beginning. So I'd like to hear your ideas after class. And how do you think we should handle this situation? You're showing them the respect of being able to solve problems on their own. I can see you're upset. Can we talk after class so I can listen? If you let them know that you're going to listen, they will calm down a lot. And the kids who have their hand up all the time, sometimes they have their hands up because they have ADHD or something else that's getting in the way, and they can't remember their questions at the end of class. They can only remember their question right there because that's when they thought of the question, and they get super anxious if they have to hold on to that question. And then they raise their hand again because they have another question, but they're already feeling badly about themselves because of what happened with the last question. If you ask them to write down every question during class and tell them that you'll answer the most burning question, the question they care about the most, at the end of class, you can't answer all of their questions after class. That's not going to work. But if you tell them, I'll answer your most burning question after class, if you write them down, they will be able to sit in the classroom without disrupting the whole class. We do a lot with giving choices because we want students to take responsibility for their own actions, and we want them to have natural consequences. So we'll talk more about that in a second, but if you say you can stay here or you can take a break, up to you, but it's not okay to prevent the other kids from learning. That's also respectful. You're giving them a choice, and you're telling them what you care about and what your responsibilities are. And I've frequently had to say to kids, my job is to protect all of you. And my job is also to protect the teachers. And when you go through your perspective with them without saying they're bad, and you say, so I have to protect both groups, how can I do that? Can you help me figure out the best way to do that given this situation? They may not be able to help you, depends on how old they are, but you'd be surprised how young some of the kids are who can understand that and help you come up with a solution that they can live with. So this language comes out of something called success counseling, and if you want to sort of follow it back, it comes out of choice theory, and then goes into reality therapy, and then into success counseling. So this script is phenomenal. What were you trying to accomplish? Let's say someone tries to hit another kid. If you say, you can't hit that other kid, that's not okay, blah, blah, blah. You have no idea what was going on, and you don't know why that kid tried to hit someone else. Maybe they were being obnoxious, but probably they were feeling hurt. And probably they were trying to do something that wasn't immediately obvious. Maybe they're on the spectrum and making friends is really hard. And they thought they were being funny, but the other kid didn't think it was funny, so they tried to take a swipe at him. So it wasn't the hit that was the problem, it was the fact that they didn't understand that what they said wasn't funny. So we always try to ask, what were you trying to do? What was your goal? Because until we know that, we have no idea how to react to them. Can you think of ways to resolve the differences? And usually the answer is no. So give them time. Say, okay, I'll be back in 15 minutes. I'll be back in 30 minutes. Make sure they're in a safe place. Somebody else has some eyes on them in general. Leave them alone. Then you can go back and say, oh, did you figure it out? Or, two kids are having a conflict. Okay, well, figure out how you can make it work, a compromise. I'll be back. If you go back a couple times and they still can't come up with a compromise, they'll start having a lot of reason to come up because they're stuck where they are. They can't leave. And maybe lunch is starting, right? They will come around to something. We're giving them the responsibility and the knowledge to start managing themselves. And does this take longer? Oh, it so does. And it would be so much faster if they would actually listen to us. I went to accredit another school, and I loved the school. I thought it was fantastic. And I was walking around, and I was like, wow, these kids actually do what you tell them to. Like, the head of school who was walking me around told somebody to stop doing something, and they immediately stopped. And we were in classrooms, and the teachers asked them to, put their stuff away and do something else. Everyone in the class complied. Everyone. And I left, and at the time I thought, wow, that would be nice every once in a while. And then I thought, I wouldn't trade the way the kids are for kids who obey. Because our kids come up with mathematical formulas that make the teachers run around and say, have you ever seen this before? It works. Have you ever seen this before? That's so exciting. And you can't be someone who thinks that differently and follow the rules. And when they're adults, we want them to be exactly how they are. We don't want them to follow the rules. We want them to be able to break the rules, because that's where innovation comes from. So if you look at the kids and you want them to follow the rules, you're creating someone, you're making them feel worse about themselves because they can't help it. And you're taking away from society at large. They have rough edges when they come to us. They're not polished. But when they go out into the world, if they can feel good about themselves, then they will take on the world. One sixth grader said to me one day, Jackie, how come, they call us by our first names, part of our respect campaign. Jackie, how come they say they want us to think outside the box? But what they really mean is they want us to think outside of this box, but inside of this box. Why is there a box? And I'm sure that at the school I went to, some of the kids could think out of the box. But how awesome is it to spend your days with a lot of kids who always think out of the box and aren't always emotionally regulated, sometimes get in conflicts with each other. It makes it a harder day, but it sure is interesting. So here's another script that goes along with the one I just talked about. What were you trying to accomplish? What were you trying to do? How did it work? Okay, the kid wants a friend, says something he thinks is funny, does not go over well. How did it work? It didn't work. Okay. Kids, adults, no one changes unless they want to change. You can do whatever you want. You can tell them what to do, and inside they might do it, but they're saying, you know, forget you, under their breaths. So how did it work? Puts the responsibility back on them and the awareness back on them. And they say, it didn't. Would you like some help figuring out another way to do it? No is the first answer. It is always no. And then you say, okay, I'll be here when you're ready. And when they are ready, when it happens again, or maybe the time after that, they will come find you and say, okay, I want to know how to do it differently. Again, it takes longer, but this is how we send them off to college, able to take care of themselves, able to understand themselves, and able to maneuver in social situations in particular where they don't always understand immediately. Part of choice is giving the kids a voice in what's happening. So let's say they really want to be part of a musical ensemble. But music has rules. And you kind of have to go along with those rules in order to make the music work. But they don't necessarily want to do that, or they can't do that. So how can I, this is how we have to do it in order to accomplish the goal for the whole class. How can I make it so that you will be able to, or you will want to join this group? Is there anything we can do? Now, you have to use different language depending on the age of the child, but if you give them choice, they will feel respected and they will come with you. Think again about how you would treat another adult. You wouldn't say to an adult, listen, you can't be in this group because of X, so go away. You would say it differently. And if you talk to them as though they're adults, it will take you so much further. So I want to answer all of your questions, but I have material I have to cover. Can we talk about it later? Right? That goes back to what I was talking about before. Being honest about your responsibilities too helps enormously. They don't necessarily understand your perspective if you don't give it to them. Hold on, I have to check my time. This was a younger child who was racing to see how quickly he could put the periodic table together on the floor, and then had to stretch out to say ta-da. So we talked a little bit before about real experiments. They don't want to know what's going to happen. Figure out a way to change the experiment that you have to cover for chemistry or physics, something like that, so that the answer is not obvious. The end is not obvious. You can still have them do the same experiment that helps them learn whatever concept you're trying to teach, but you can add a mystery element. Maybe you have to do it the correct way, the first way, because there's something they have to learn in a specific order. Then tell them, okay, let's mix up the order. Let them have the space to discover something new. We minimize homework, but we try to make the homework more difficult, the concepts more difficult. That's much more engaging than doing more math problems. Figure out all the variable, all the ways you could change this math problem and try to make it work for something else. They'll learn the math along the way. They won't be bored, and they'll have learned more than if they just do problem after problem. Alternate assignments are awesome, and alternate assignments can be support, and they can be talent development. And when you combine those two, they're usually better. So one of the things that we do, a lot of our students have executive functioning issues. And when we had study skills classes or executive functioning skills classes, they didn't work all that well because they're boring and no one wanted to be there. So we put executive functioning skills together with passion projects, so they get to choose the project they're working on, and they learn the skill at the time when they need it to accomplish something that they want to do. Support can be, or alternate assessments can also be for kids on the spectrum who have trouble with word problems, great at math, trouble with word problems. Let them write the word problems for the other kids in the class. It's another way in to help them understand how to make, to understand how word problems work so that they can do it successfully. There was a boy last week who had to name all of the parts of a microscope, but he has dyslexia and dyscalculia, and he was really avoiding this particular assignment. And he went to the teacher and he said, "Hey, can I make it out of clay?" And, we had a few thoughts like, oh, this is going to be like a bad arts and crafts project. But no, he's good at clay. And he made an almost perfect replica out of clay and walked the teacher through all of the different parts, all of the different ways in which the parts interacted. He learned more from that than from a worksheet where he had to write the assignments. Give the kids a chance to tell you how they will show you what they know. That can always be an option. And for most classes, we try to give kids choices about what they'll write about, what they'll, the way they'll show us. We have kids in there's a TV show in the United States called The View. It's a bunch of women sitting around a table talking about topics. So we had, the kids were studying the robber barons from, the 20s and 30s, like Carnegie and Rockefeller. And so they dressed up as those characters and pretended they were on the View. And they had a discussion back and forth, and I don't know, Carnegie got in a huge fight with Mellon. You know whether they know the material if they have to have a conversation like that. For kids who can't write or have a lot of trouble writing, doing something like this allows them to shine and to show you what they know. If you need to work on writing separately, work on it separately. I talked a little bit about choices. To us, it's part of respect. Because if you're working, your boss might tell you to do something. And it may have to have a structure and the format that they want. But they don't necessarily tell you what order to do it in. They don't necessarily tell you every single detail. They leave it to you to figure that out. Because if you tell them every single thing, it feels like you're looking down on them. And the kids feel that too. Give them choice, give them space. And because they love going down rabbit holes and finding these topics that they think are totally fascinating and that's all they want to study, if we give them time to explore those, the classes become so much more enriching. Sometimes a student will go on a tangent and it's about Pokemon. That's pretty easy. Bring it right back. But sometimes they've made a connection that we don't yet see. And if we don't give them the space to be able to explore that, then we're not living up to our value of see the connections in everything. We have to give them that space. So anxiety it was rampant before COVID. It is out of control right now. I assume it is that way in most countries. It is certainly that way in the United States. Anything we can do to reduce that anxiety helps students learn. If you're anxious, you're not learning. So we can't help them figure out where they got stuck. We can't help them learn unless we figure out ways to help them reduce that anxiety. So find something to love about everyone. There is something to love. Sometimes it takes a week. You'll find it. Keep looking. Sensory accommodations make a big deal. Let the kids wear headphones if they need to. If the hallways are too loud, the cafeteria is too loud, the class is too loud, the class has someone who's really loud in it and they can't modulate their voice, let them wear noise-canceling headphones in that class. If someone is coming into a class and they're stressed out from the process of getting there, let them leave class early and walk down the hall and get to their next class without all of those people. Give them a room to sit in to eat their lunch that's different from the cafeteria, where the noise is like ricocheting across metal beams at the top of the ceiling. We have nooks and different kinds of seating everywhere. And in the science lab, there's a nook where you can climb in. It's like a peninsula. You've got three sides. There's a nice cushion in there. They can climb in and huddle up, but they can still see the entire classroom and they can hear everything. But science, for kids who are scared of it, makes them really anxious, and they're going to leave the room if they can't tolerate that anxiety. But if you give them a place within the classroom, they'll stay and listen. They won't be as engaged as they would have, but it's a scaffold, it's a stepping stone to be able to let the kids learn and stay in the class. Because if kids leave class, then they're not learning. And when they come back, they're behind. And that increases anxiety. So whatever we can do to keep them in the class. We had a student earlier this year who hated social studies a lot and constantly had to go to the bathroom. Something was up. And we finally figured out a solution. We put a beanbag in there, and now he never leaves the class. So explore everything. It's not just what it seems on the surface. So one of the things that we do is we don't give a late penalty if somebody misses a deadline. Missing deadlines is one of the biggest things that cause problems in traditional schools. Because if you can't start, or you can't finish, or you have too many ideas, or any of the other millions of reasons why kids can't finish something, then just taking away points didn't work in their last school. It's not going to work in ours either. So they don't lose points. They get extra help. But they also don't get out of the assignment. So if someone is, loses half the points, and then the next day they lose the rest of the points because they didn't turn it in, they don't do the assignment. But we minimize homework, and we really want them to figure out what's going on, and we gave them the assignment because we thought it was valuable. We don't want them to get out of it. And we have a whole support system that I won't go into, but a whole support system behind the scenes to make sure that they don't get behind in a bunch of classes, right? Because that will make their anxiety spike again. But taking away the late penalty drops anxiety immediately. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you for your enjoyable talk. Any questions or idea you want to share?
Oh, I didn't realize it was down there.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm coming late, but I will explain my situation. I have my son. He's 9 years old, and I consider him. The first diagnosis was autism. After a year, I re-diagnosed. They told me he has ADHD. And they told me just let him learning English. He doesn't want to speak Arabic. I ignored at that time. This was 5 years ago. So during these years, I intend to learn him Arabic as much as I can, as speech, and OT, and what all the session he needs. During the time that we stay home, do you know that 3 months or 4 months, he put 3 sentences, the fellow sentence in the right sentence, in the right situation. So it makes me really, I didn't understand that he loves English. So my question is, the kids who has ADHD, are they prefer English than Arabic? Because all the time he listen the English through the TV, through the kids. All my kids in our family, they speak English. Plus, everything around him is English. This is the first question. Second question.
Can I answer that first? So the joke about 2E kids is that when you've met one 2E kid, you've met one 2E kid. So there is no kids with ADHD like English better. Your son likes English better. Someone else might like Arabic better. One of the things that you can do if you really want him to learn Arabic is find something he loves to do, and the only way he can participate is to do so in Arabic. Make it about what he wants to do, and then he'll show more interest in Arabic. But he's said over and over and over again that he doesn't, that he wants to learn English. So I think you'll have to incentivize him a different way to get him to learn Arabic. Can I come back to you and answer someone else's question? And if we have time, I'll come back?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Okay, no problem.
I know we don't have too much time left. You can come ask me afterwards, though. I'm happy to answer. Any other questions? Let's go back then.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I would like to know the criteria that you are using for identification of it was exceptional to admit in the school.
That is a big question. Because most kids aren't identified as 2E, and kids who are 2E aren't usually identified in schools because their challenges get in the way. So what we do is we first talk to parents and we get the whole story from the parents. And then we look at any testing they have. We don't look at testing until after we talk to the parents because we don't know if the testing's any good. We don't know if there was a student who had just come out of a therapeutic setting and shook the entire time that she was taking the test. Those test results aren't going to be valid. So then we'll ask for earlier testing. If there is no testing, you can't say someone, all 2E kids are not the same, but there are certain things that are sort of markers, like they love to learn ancient languages. They're like obsessed with Futhark, or they love Dungeons and Dragons and they play it every weekend for like 10 hours a day. Or they know everything about paleontology. We had a boy who, the first thing we found out about him was that he knew every county and every income bracket in the United States. So when he would meet someone, he would say, "Where are you from?" And they would say, San Mateo, California. And this is a true story. And he said, "Oh, that's one of the richest counties in the country." And blah, blah, blah. All the facts came out and the guy's mouth is hanging down, right? When you listen to the stories that parents tell, you can get a feeling for whether this is a child who will fit in. We still have to do more work. That's not enough, right? Because one, parents don't always tell the truth. And two, that isn't necessarily enough to know whether we have the right supports for that child and whether that child will be a good fit for us. Is that it? We're done? I'm done. Thank you very much for listening.